Welcome back, Dia Builders, to another prop tutorial. I'm going to show you guys how to do individual cinder blocks as well as individual bricks for your dioramas and your action figures to have some more accessories. And as always, guys, if I forget to mention what I'm using in the video, I do have pictures of everything at the end, so stay tuned for that, and let's just get into this. Alright, so here we are with the first thing that we need is Project White foam board. A lot of kids use this for projects to show off their projects at school. I know when I first got into diorama building, I bought about 3 sheets of this and I really didn't use it, so I repurposed it for this. So what we're going to need is just a small piece like this so I could fit it in camera view for you guys. I couldn't bring the whole board with me. And so we're going to grab our ruler and we're going to line up our ruler. Actually, I'm going to zoom in for you guys so you guys can see a close-up of all the measurements. So now that I got the ruler lined up, we're going to measure out 1.5 inches twice. So here's our first 1.5 inches right here. And as always, I'm always using my trusty fine tip Sharpie. We're going to measure one more 1.5 inches, which is right here. And then from this line, we're going to flip over to our millimeters. We're going to measure out 3 20mm sections. So I'm going to line up my line right there. And measure out 3 sections that are 20mm long. So let me scroll down here for you guys. And that's our basic measurements for right now. And each of these sections are going to be 20 millimeters tall. So I'm going to measure out the 20 millimeters tall, and I'm going to draw a line straight across afterwards. So I'm going to come back after I measure that out. Alright, so here we are. Like I said, down here you measure 2 sections that are 1.5 inches, and then down here you're going to measure 3 sections that are 20 millimeters wide. And then these corresponding lines, they're the height of each of these bricks, or each of the sections for the cinder block, and they're each 20 millimeters separated. So all we're going to do is draw our lines all the way up and then all the way across. And I'll come back as soon as I get that done and make sure I get it straight off camera. Alright, we're back. I have all my lines connected and crossed, and this piece of white foam board makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're going to get 9 cinder blocks out of this. So each of these rows is going to be 1 cinder block assembly. So we're going to make this one little sheet makes 9. So imagine if you used a whole sheet of this, you can make tons of these. So the next part we're going to do is we're going to cut out each of these sections, and I would recommend using an X-Acto blade, because if you use some of these cheap blades, especially these snap blades that we use to cut out a lot of our foam from the pink foam that we use on dioramas, these flex a lot, so you'll end up getting bevel edges if you use this for the most part, unless you're really careful. So what I like using is just my tiny X-Acto knife, because the blade has almost no flex to it. And so how you're going to want to do this, you're going to want to make at least 3 passes. You're not going to try to cut all the way through the first time. You're going to take 3 passes. The first pass is going to cut through the top layer. The second half is going to cut through the foam in between. And then the last pass is going to cut the white paper at the bottom, because it gives you just a cleaner cut. And if you try to force your blade in there, you're going to dull your blade pretty fast. And if you're going to make a lot of these, you don't want to dull your blade, because you're going to have to keep switching out. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that technique for you guys on camera. I'm just going to grab something really quick to put under this white foam board so I don't cut through my table. Alright, I just grabbed another piece of foam just to put under so I don't damage my table underneath. So basically I'm going to just turn this on its side. I'm going to try to do this on camera and demonstrate that technique I mentioned not too long ago. And we're going to just follow the line. Hope you guys can see this. Hopefully my hand's not in the way. So we're just going to follow the line straight. You can use a metal ruler for this to get more straighter lines, but I've been cutting these out for a while now, so I'm pretty confident in my skills. You're just going to do your first pass over, and remember, the first pass we're just cutting through the top paper of the white foam board. You're going to take it nice and slow, follow your lines. And that's your first pass, and we're going to make our second pass. Now we're cutting through the actual foam in between. And then this last cut should cut the last piece of paper at the very bottom. And this is how you could get some really clean cut lines. Just make sure you push all the way down. and it should come off. And that's your first cut. I'll cut out these at a different time. I'm just going to move on and cut the rest of this out and just demonstrate making one cinder block at a time. So we don't need this side piece right here that I scribbled on. This is just an extra piece. You can put that in your junk scrap pile so you could use it for rubble later down on the line or for whatever projects you want to use. Same thing with this. You just want to make your first pass, cut the top paper. Same technique, cut through the foam. And then the last cut should cut right through the last paper. You get pretty clean cuts. Quick tip, if you don't get a clean cut like you like, you could just grab the piece that you don't like, grab the edge, and then I use nail files with the fine grade on there, and you could just sand it evenly if you have that issue, so you can square up your pieces. So I'm just going to cut the rest of these out, and then we'll go on to the next step. So here we are with all the pieces cut out. And I like to mention, just to refresh your guys' memory of the sizes, this is 20 millimeters by 20 millimeters, this, all three of these squares. This is 20 millimeters tall and then 1.5 inches long, just so you guys know the measurements correctly. And our next part we're going to do is create these cuts into the foam so we can put all the pieces and it'll start looking like a cinder block. So what I'm going to do is just grab one of my front pieces or one of my side pieces and then one of these little squares. I'm going to grab my fine tip Sharpie. And what I'm going to do is line up this line of the side with the line or with the side of the small square. So we're just going to line those up and make sure everything's flat and even. I don't know if you guys can see that. Should be lined up. Hold it there, and we're going to go behind it and mark a line. We're going to flip it around. We're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to mark the line right here, right behind it. And then you're going to, what you can do, if you guys want this to make it super accurate, which I was doing in the beginning, but I kind of eyeball it now since I make a ton of these. You could get your ruler and line up, you're on millimeters, so line up your line with the line that you put down earlier, and you're going to measure 10 millimeters and then draw a line, and then same thing with this line. You're going to go 10 millimeters to the side and draw a line, and you'll have your center. But what I like doing is the same technique I was doing earlier, just eyeball the center, put the piece of foam there, and then draw a line on both sides of your foam. So you're going to get something that looks like this. And you're going to do that same thing on this side. And I'm going to do the lines right now off camera, and then I'll come back when they're both drawn out, and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, here we are. I drew all the lines on both sides. One thing I did forget to mention, you do want the two lines in the middle to both be centered on both pieces. So after you draw these two lines any way that you want, to make sure they line up correctly later down on the line, you could just grab your ruler, line up all the lines, and then draw your lines so they're evenly spaced out. But now that we have that, we're going to cut out each of these lines in a very specific way. And this is why I mentioned that technique I told you a little bit ago when we're cutting the pieces out, how you do the 3 passes to make sure you get a clean line. This will come in handy, that technique. So basically what we're going to do, like the technique I mentioned earlier, we're just going to cut through the top layer of the paper, the first pass over, and try to follow your line as best as possible. And then we're going to do the second pass where we're just cutting through the layer of foam now all the way down to that last piece of paper. And we want to stop there. We don't want to cut through this last piece of paper on the other side. We just want to make an incision all the way down to the paper without cutting the paper on there. And what we're going to do, let's see if I can catch this on camera for you guys. We're going to try to pretty much skin this piece off. So we're going to grab our blade and stick it between the foam and the paper that we didn't cut. And we're just going to cut along that side. And it should just, now that we have that piece like that, I don't know if you guys caught that, I just stuck the blade right in there. And now we could just pop this off. And now we have this great, this indent right there. So basically we're going to cut all those pieces out. And this is why I said I'm going to show you guys how to make individual bricks and individual cinder blocks. This comes into the individual bricks. So when you do this project, if you're doing it a lot, it's good to save these little tiny pieces, because you could black base these and then use the same color same painting technique that I used in my brick wall tutorial and paint them the same way. So I saved all my little pieces from these little corners and from the center and just painted up the way I paint bricks, and that's how I make all these little bricks. So you get a 2-in-1 with this technique. So you get cinder blocks out of it, and you get a bunch of individual bricks that you can put on your dioramas or use them for props for your figures. I just want to point that out. So I'm going to cut out all these pieces the same way. I will demonstrate it one more time for you guys. So we're just cutting through the first layer of paper, following your line, and then we're doing a second pass, just going through the foam and not through that last layer of paper. We're stopping at that layer. And now we're grabbing our X-Acto blade and we're going as close as we can to that last layer of paper and just following it all the way down behind what we just cut, and we just pop it off. The center is a little bit tricky, but it's basically the same thing. We're gonna cut through the first layer of paper on both sides. And remember, be careful when you're using any type of blades cutting this. So we cut through the paper, and then we're gonna make our second pass and cut through the foam. Same thing on this side. And then what you're gonna do is go right here, right behind where you just scored, and just stick your blade on this side straight down. And then same thing, okay, there you go. And same thing on this side, straight down. And then what you could do, if you did it right, just pop off the middle of it. So you get these indents, and you're gonna do this on both sides of the side pieces. So I'm going to do that off camera and come back to the next step. Alright, so here we are back. We have all the little pieces cut out from the indentations. And the next part we're going to do is gluing. So you could either use Elmer's glue or hot glue, but I found out, at least in my own case, hot glue works a lot better. It makes them a little bit more durable, I think, in my opinion. But you can use Elmer's glue or tacky glue, whatever you want. So basically what we're going to do, if you did eyeball it and you didn't measure out exactly, sometimes one of these sides looks bigger than the other, which that's the case. Just make sure when you're gluing, both sides that have the same shape are right next to each other, basically parallel from each other when you close them down. So we're just going to grab our first square, and we're going to apply hot glue right where we cut out that first thing. So we're applying the hot glue, and then we're going to apply our square, and make sure you press up against it, and do be careful, hot glue is hot. And just wipe down the sides, make it nice and clean looking. There we go. And we're going to do the same thing for the center and for the other side. We're going to work on one side first and then apply the second side right after all these are glued in. So we're going to do the same thing. Apply hot glue right in the middle where we cut out the previous piece. Grab one of our squares and press it in there. Make sure it's all even. Press it in. And hot glue does give you a window of opportunity to adjust all your pieces. This piece is in pretty good. We're going to do the same thing for the last piece, the last square. We're going to grab our piece, apply some hot glue, and then apply our square. Clean up the hot glue. And right now is the time to clean up the hot glue as best you can, because if you do have big globs and then you're trying to clean it afterwards, you could rip the paper or the foam. So that's why you do it while it's still a little bit warm. Sorry about that. And now that we have this side done, we're going to apply hot glue to all the crevices in the second piece that doesn't have any of the squares. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of hot glue here, in the middle, and then on the side. And then we're just going to apply that on top of our other piece, line it up straight. Press them in there. And make sure you give it a good squeeze where the squares are joining with the paper. If you don't want to do it in the middle, because then your cinder block might come out a little squished in the middle and look a little weird. We're going to clean up the hot glue, and any of the hot glue strands, just go ahead and take them off with your fingers. Like I said, they're a lot easier to take off now when it's a little bit warm, so they're not completely attached. There we go. Get rid of that extra hot glue. And there's your cinder block right there. So out of this project, you can make the cinder block. You can paint it the same way I do my concrete paint that I did on the walls. I use the same technique to paint mine. And like I said, for each of these cinder blocks, you're going to get 3 bricks. So if you make 9 of these, times that by 3, that's 27. You'll have 27 individual bricks. So you get bricks out of this, you get cinder blocks out of this. But let's get to painting so you guys can see how I paint these up. And I will leave links in the description of my painting tutorials, just in case you want to check those out too. So here we are, we're going to start painting up our props that we just made. I just watered down some black paint in a small bottle, or in my almost empty bottle of black paint. I just added a little bit of water so I can make a black wash. I'm just going to pour a little bit right here on the side. It's really watery. And I am painting on a whiteboard so I protect my filming area. One thing I do want to point out, since there is water in our black wash, if you do use Elmer's glue, you want to be careful, because since there is water in this, you can dissolve the Elmer's glue that attaches your cinder block together. That's why I like using hot glue, so I don't have to worry about that extra thing. So we're just going to black base everything. I'm sure you guys are aware of black basing. We're going to black base this whole thing, the outside and the inside. You want to get the inside as well. You're going to do this to the whole thing. I'm going to put this aside. Same thing with these. You're going to start black basing these as well. So when you do paint these, just put a bunch of it on there, because the paper's not protecting it, so it's going to absorb a lot of that black paint. So I'm going to finish black washing these. Alright, here we are with the bricks black based, and all we're going to do is grab our red brick color, which I have here, and we're just going to give these guys a quick dry brush. So we're just dry brushing, using our dry brushing technique on the bricks. If this is your guys' first time painting or doing one of my tutorials, check out my first brick painting tutorial, and I explain the dry brushing technique there. I'll leave a link to it. I'm going to finish these up and come back with these at the end of the video. I'm going to move on to the cinder block. So here we are with our cinder block all black based. Got the inside, got the outside. We're just going to do the dry brushing technique and the color scheme on the outside. You're not going to do the inside, because when you're taking pictures and stuff like that, just leaving it black creates just its own shadow. So you don't have to like fix your lighting to get a shadow in there. It just creates its own shadow with black in there, and to me it looks good in my eye. And this is how I paint mine. So the first color we're going to use is a dark gray. So I'm going to just put some right here on my whiteboard just to work off of. And then we're also going to use just a regular gray color. And we're just going to dry brush. I even have a little bit too much paint on there. Okay, now I'm going to dry brush this light gray, this dark gray on here. You're going to want to get the top part of it too, and the bottom part. The only part that we're avoiding with the dry brushing is the center of it. We're going to get all sides as well. I'm going to apply all this dark gray paint. And I'm just using the same color scheme as I did in my older video where I show you guys how to paint concrete bricks. There we go. And now that that's all dry brushed with that dark gray, I'm going to move on. Even though I have some of the dark gray in my brush, I'm going to move on to the light gray. It'll help it blend in a little bit better. I'm doing the same dry brushing technique with this light gray, but don't go as heavy as you did with this darker gray. Just go sparingly with this light gray. You're going to try to hit the corners, the edges, sometimes in the middle. You want to get these top parts just very lightly. Same thing with this. You're going for the edges mostly. You could go in the middle a little bit to give it some texture. Same thing on this side. Like I said, you don't want to go full coverage. Same thing on the sides. I want to get some of that light gray on there. This one's pretty much done. And I'll come back with all the bricks that I did and all the cinder blocks I did, because while the paint was drying on the black wash, I went and cut out the extra pieces that I showed you guys in the beginning, because we did make a bunch of them. So I'll come back and show you guys the final product. Alright, here they are all painted up. I do want to suggest that you seal these if you are going to use them a lot. If you do use a spray sealer, just remember this is exposed foam, and spray sealer sometimes does eat up that foam. So if you want to use the spray sealer, you're going to want to coat this with at least 3 layers of Elmer's glue to protect it, and then you can clear coat it. I just want to point that out. Same thing with these, since there is exposed foam, you're going to want to seal these with some Elmer's glue and then clear coat them as well if you're going to use the spray. Other than that, you could use Mod Podge, which works perfectly fine with these props. I did want to mention that these are pretty cool because you could use them, and say you have popsicle sticks, you could put them through here and you can make a bench out of them. You can stack these up pretty good too. Just want to demonstrate some things that you could use them for. You know, they do stack really well. Same thing with these bricks. You could just, you know, lay them out during like a battle scene, or maybe somebody breaking through a wall. I am going to cut to another thing so I can show you guys how they measure up with a big figure like a Hulk, and a normal size figure like a Spider-Man, and then something like an import size, so you guys could kind of get the scale of how they fit in with all of them. So here are the bricks and the cinder blocks next to a figure that's around the import size. Here are the cinder blocks and the bricks compared to a short/medium size Marvel Legend. And here's Hulk compared next to the cinder blocks and the bricks. You could also use a scale maybe with NECA, because they are an inch taller than Marvel Legends and a little bit taller than imports. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and hit that sexy subscribe button. People use this for school, fuck. And I hope you guys enjoyed this, fuck.